Welcome to a special meeting of our Parks and Waterways. Today is Tuesday, July 16th, 2019. The time is 11:04 a.m. Attending are Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Filios. Do we have any changes to the agenda? I don't hear of any. So what we're going to do is we're going to proceed with an update regarding the current Parks and Waterways ordinances. And specifically, we're going to be addressing some of the challenges regarding enforcement and some of the options that are available to us. As a board, we will not be making a decision today. We're gathering more information, but I'll reiterate to what I said last week. We're not going to kick this can down the road. We just want to make sure we have all the facts. There will be public comment, but I'm going to reserve it to the end. So most of the exchange that will take place this morning will be between the Sheriff's Organization, possibly Director Nick Snyder, our attorney, if we need her to consult her. By the way, this is Jamila Holmes. She's a civil deputy prosecuting attorney, and of course the board members. So without any further delay, who would like to go first?
I'm happy to frame the...
Go right ahead, Nick.
Nick Snyder for the record. Commissioners, we're here today to talk about the existing Idaho Code and county ordinance that speak to wakes, damage to property, injury to persons, and what is currently on the books and what KCSO feels are adequate tools or maybe inadequate. I'm not here to speak to that. Lieutenant Higgins has joined us today. Rec Safety Supervisor Will Klinkefis should be joining us pretty soon. I know he was caught up at a traffic accident. He's assisting on. So with that, Commissioners, we're just here to get a better understanding of what tools KCSO needs to enforce some of the problems that are out on our area waterways. I think obviously most of the concern has been on the Spokane River. We've had meetings, as you know, and we've discussed it. So we're here today to see if KCSO needs new language, needs the language existing tweaked. Should the Board of County Commissioners adopt new ordinance? Sergeant Klinkefis is about ready to join us. Should the board adopt new ordinance? What recommendations, cautions, or advisement maybe KCSO has for the board that, hey, if you implement this, this may be a challenge to enforce. I don't know what they may speak to, but just some Q&A on what we have, what we might adopt, and how we give them the tools to do their job. So
Okay.
that's where we're at.
Will, how are you doing?
Good, Commissioner. How are you?
Okay, this is Sergeant Klinkefis. Do you want to lead us off, if you would, regarding the current ordinances in place and some of the difficulties involved in enforcing what's already in place?
Yes, sir. I can do that. So currently there's a state law that's in place that basically the verbiage in it talks about a boater is responsible for its wake and any damage that it may cause or injury that it may cause. It's a pretty gray, subjective code that in and of itself is difficult at best to enforce because we have to tie a specific wake from a specific boat to a specific damage or injury, which can be very difficult to do, obviously. I think there's maybe one, maybe two cases I can remember in the past.
Yeah, and in my tenure in Marine, there's only been one incident where we were able to cite and prosecute, and that was when Hagen Marine put out that new marquee that they had, and they were doing a video of it. And they actually, it was the only boat on the water at the time, and it caused a dock to basically split apart. And it was actually driving down the middle, but it puts up such a wall of water. So. But that was the only boat on the water. The video showed it, and so we were able to utilize that, and it was pretty good.
Just so we're all on the same page, I guess you're referring to code 67-7016?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
That's Idaho code, by the way, folks. That's what we're referencing
It
here.
is.
Go right ahead.
And there's also, the 67-7016 that talks about negligent operation, operating in a manner to endanger or likely endanger a person or property. So it kind of aligns with that other previous code. And so if there's something that we deem, it's similar to the reckless driving statute off of the road, that if we deem whatever the operation was, and again, it's subjective to every situation, could be different. So it's difficult to enforce in that respect on the water. Moving on to county ordinances, there's really nothing necessarily in county ordinance that talks about those specific instances where damage is caused, but it does talk about distances from shorelines, docks, other vessels. Specifically on the Spokane River, Vessels have to be 100 feet from shorelines or docks or other things in the water when going at more than 15 miles per hour, and they have to be, they have to be at no wake speed at 100 feet. 50 feet from other vessels when going less than 15 or more than, or between 0 and 15 miles an hour. It is the distance between vessels.
So how far is it from the shore
From shoreline is 100 feet on the Spokane River.
and on the lake?
On the lake is 200 feet.
Like it's 200.
Yeah. So those are the codes that are specifically in place currently. Again, you know, the distances are set to protect property, to protect people, to make it safer. And I would submit to you that the distances are enforceable. We have to train our deputies to be able to, in good faith, estimate distances and know what those distances look like. It's hard to get boaters to know what that distance looks like. Their estimation on distance could be different. We teach boat Idaho classes for the state of Idaho. The Kootenai County Sheriff's Office does, and we can ask 10 random students, you know, what 100 feet looks like, and the guesses are way different. You know, 10 people have 10 different guesses on what 100 feet looks like. And so the current ordinance is most of the vessels on the Spokane River, I think that's what we're talking about here specifically, is the Spokane River. I would say that the majority of them fall within the constraints of state law and county ordinance for the most part while they're operating. The only time that they wouldn't be is if a vessel, whether it be a wake boat or a large cuddy cabin or whatever type of boat that is, that throws such a large weight that it causes damage, in that instance, they would be in violation of the state code for causing that damage. But again, we would have to be able to tie that specific vessel to that wake and then to that damage.
Okay, you made reference earlier to one distance that was 50 feet?
That's vessel to vessel.
Oh, vessel to vessel.
Vessels going, one going, you know, east, one going west, they have to keep 50
That's a
feet
50 foot
between
spread,
them
okay.
if they're at more than 15 miles per hour.
Okay. But the 100-foot distance to shore or a dock is irrespective of speed, is that correct?
Yes.
I mean, unless you're docking, obviously.
Unless you're docking, yeah. If they're closer than 100 feet, they have to be at no wake
At no
speed
wake,
or idle
okay.
speed.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
all right.
If they're within a 100-foot distance.
Okay.
The distances on the river, you know, I've looked at it many times via our county website and Google Maps. There's several spots that are around 350, give or take, feet wide from edge of dock to edge of dock. And it does go upwards of 600 feet in different places as well. Greens Ferry Island is much larger because of the way that the river flows in that area, but the distances from shorelines and docks to docks on the Coeur d'Alene River, or the Spokane River, do fluctuate between about 350 to 600 feet, give or take. And so for two vessels to pass each other legally on the river, you need 200 feet worth of distance for them to pass each other on the river.
Okay. So what have been the biggest challenges in enforcing what's already on the books?
Biggest challenges is just, so we get a lot of reports, and the reports are, a white boat just came within 30 feet of my dock, I don't know any bound numbers, I can't describe the operator, and I'd like them talked to. Well, there's lots of white boats, and so we don't get a lot of direct information that we could use to contact these folks. And doing some of the research from around the nation, it talks about specifically in the code, and I've talked with the director about this a few times as well, is citizens having a vested interest in using their cell phones, using their cameras, taking pictures of the vessels, trying to get bound numbers for us and things like that. If they see a vessel doing something that they believe is contrary to state law, if they can at a minimum get us that bound number, we can then contact that person. We may not be able to take enforcement, but we can at least do some education, talk to that boater and make sure that they're aware of what they're doing and what they've been seen doing. In the case of video or a photographic evidence, you know, we may be able to take enforcement action on that. We only have so many eyes on the water, so many deputies that can patrol, and there's many citizens out there, and so I would equate that back to a block watch program or something similar like that, where we need the public's vested interest in this as well to help us out with getting us the information and seeing violations and reporting them with information we can use.
Okay. So when we get into things like wave height, is there any technology available to measure wave height?
Not that I know of, sir. It would have to be an estimate. you know, and there's a lot of laws on the books for everything there where we have to make good faith assessments and good faith estimates of what we're seeing. Even on speed on the road, there's a provision that we have to visually estimate the speed before we confirm it with a radar or a laser gun or something to that effect. But to my knowledge, I don't know of any technology out there that we could use other than a trained eye to determine the size, the height of a wake.
Questions?
Well, I know you can use, I mean, if you can tell the distance of a golf ball using a rangefinder that you can buy for under $100, I can tell you the distance from the boat to the shore very simply.
Sure.
And I'm sure there are technologies that will tell you the wave height also.
If there are, I'm not aware.
Well, we need to be aware because it's bad. May I say a couple of things?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll go through my comments really fast because I look at this as just like speeding through a school zone. It's not a good idea. We all know it. We see somebody do it. It's peer pressure. Don't do it. And we think we might get caught, and we know if we do, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. That's education. Speed limit on I-90 is a speed limit. Just because you own a Ferrari doesn't mean you get to go 110 miles an hour. And we can't have a cop every mile to enforce it. It's called selective enforcement. But we do it. We don't say, oh, we can't catch everybody, so we're going to give up. I'm a big shooter. I shoot a lot. That's my sport. Okay? Gun owners are some of the biggest anti-bad gun owners out there, as boat owners should be. When they see somebody misbehaving with a firearm, we report it. We report it because we know if we don't report it, we're going to get thumped with some pretty onerous laws or ordinances. So there needs to be peer pressure. I noticed in one of the advertisements now, these boats are being advertised as putting up 5.5 foot wakes. 5.5 foot. I had a great talk with a sales manager from one of the boat stores, one of the bigger ones, and he said, we want good regulation too. We want peer pressure. We want education because we want to continue to sell our boats. And I said, okay. I don't want, one did up here, I don't want a Band-Aid on this thing. I would rather say, we're going to undertake education now, some pretty strong education. That doesn't cost much and we can start it tomorrow. And then before the next boating season, have some good rules and regulations that we've put together and we've cleared through legal and we've cobbled together and plagiarized from other successful jurisdictions, including the technology to be able to determine wave height, distance, things like that. The one thing that I am absolutely opposed to on the river is tubing. When you're pulling kids along on a tube, a lot of fun, wiggle, waggle, back and forth, kids are screaming and have a good time, they're all wearing life jackets. One kid falls off and what do? We crank around to go pick up that kid. That is a prescription for disaster. I think the reasons we're here today are safety, property, and the environment, because we're washing shoreline directly into the waterway. We're putting people at risk, and we're destroying property. I've seen some great videos people have sent me, and it's just really tragic. And it's a boat that's almost on the other side of the river. The river's the big problem. Spirit Lake is a big problem. So, with that, no Band-Aids, but real fixes, and education starting right now. That's my position.
Leslie, thoughts?
I spent about 6 hours on the river over 2 weekends, and what I noticed, one of it was with Sergeant Klinkefus in the sheriff's boat, and it seemed to me that although the volume wasn't as high as it could be, that people were paying attention when we were around. Whereas the following, this past weekend, I spent time there, and things were a little bit more rowdy without having that presence. So I was there for over 3 hours, and there wasn't one sheriff's boat on the river. during the time that I was there. I did see a lot of big, beautiful boats, the wooden ones especially, throughout, just as big as wakes as the surf boats that passed us. And so it is difficult for me to look at a wave height, because now you are going to target many boats, not wake surfing only. It will branch out to more boats. I think part of the problem is the volume. There's just an incredible amount of volume on the river that just continues to increase. A lot of them weren't following speed limits, so I didn't notice that out with the sheriffs, but when I was not with the sheriff, speed limits were just not followed at all, including the little personal watercrafts like the Sea-Doos and stuff, and other boats. And when you just have that kind of volume, the large boats, it just creates a perfect storm. I don't see that any new law will help. I see that just more bodies out there is where I would go first before any new laws. I would just say, KCSO, tell me what we can do to support you in this. I'd like to see a partnership with the city of Coeur d'Alene and the city of Post Falls. Maybe do a shared resource marine program and have more bodies out there. Get 2 patrols on the Spokane River during all high peak use times. And I think that's going to cut down on a lot of the trouble. I think people pay more close attention to their speeds. And I'm not sure what to do about the volume on the river, except that just mere presence of more law enforcement is going to push some people out to the lake. Just in general, they just don't want to deal with it if they know that every time they go on the river there will be 1 or 2 boats. So I think that will help with that volume. And back to KCSO, what language would be better to enforce? I agree that it is a citizen watch thing, and the fact that this is a public playground, this is a public waterway, and people have their personal property in the public playground, in the public waterway. That's why you have encroachment permits from Idaho Department of Lands, so you can have your private property in a public waterway. So I live in the forest. I have to make sure everything around my house is cleared, otherwise it's going to, a fire danger threatens my property. On the river and the lakes, you gotta have solid stuff, especially with the volume, docks and shorelines and stuff, because it is used by the public. And I don't really have much other to do than next summer, I would like to see double the patrol, if, whatever we can try to get out there to enforce what we already have. And if it still is a persistent problem, and the mere enforcement of existing laws, the mere presence of multiple law enforcement units in this waterway doesn't significantly cut down the problem, then I'm willing to look at other measures. But from my observation, from talking to friends who live on the river, because I do have them, the only thing that is going to 100% solve every issue is going to be no wake the entire river, and nobody wants to see that.
That's
So.
not true.
Okay, hold your comments to the end, please. Keep going, Melissa.
That's it. That's all I have.
Thank you.
I had a quick question for the deputies. Out of the citations that you do in a given year average, how many of them are on the river or the lake?
I don't have those exact numbers for you,
Oh,
Commissioner,
oh.
but I can get you those
10,
numbers.
100?
Percent wise?
No, how many?
Well, how many?
Yeah, total.
We had about 200, and these are round numbers, don't quote me
No, I
on
know,
these.
no.
Round numbers last year, 240 some odd
Okay.
citations. We probably wrote upwards of 60 to 70 on the river,
Okay,
possibly.
and out of those, how many of them are DUI type or unsafe boating practices?
Probably 10
Are what?
are probably OUI related.
Okay, so.
How steep are the fines?
That's set by the courts. It's a misdemeanor, and so the courts decide what the fines are if they are convicted.
Okay, that's just really information. I was
Sure, no,
trying
of
to
course. And I can get you those stats
Okay,
directly.
I
if
think
you'd like,
that's
Commissioners.
important, yeah,
Yes, sir.
to know what we're dealing with. Thank you very much.
Lieutenant Higgins, any thoughts?
Yeah, I was just gonna address and mainly for the audiences, for staffing, you know, we too want more people on the water. We usually get enough funding through the Recreational Boating and Safety Grant and the vessel account, which is split between Parks and Waterways and us, to staff about 10 to 12 seasonal marine deputies. Over the last couple years, we've only been able to fill, how many positions you were able to fill this year?
Technically only filled two this
Two.
year, technically.
Yeah, so we got two positions this year and I think 4 last year. And that's not for lack of trying. We put out our announcements for the position in December. We've raised our pay and we pay way more than any other agency in the state for marine, seasonal marine patrol, almost by double. And we put our announcements out in December, we test in January, we test in February. This year we put 26 or
Close to 30 applicants went to background.
went to backgrounds and we hired 2.
And is failure of the background the sticking point?
It's our biggest thing is ethical issues. We have applicants that just lie constantly on their applications, and we can't have that. You know, we can't hire those
No,
people.
we can't hire those people.
And so we're just flushing them left and right.
And it's
that's
seasonal,
unfortunate.
right?
Yeah. it's
So
seasonal
guys
work.
got to say, I either don't have a job or I'm
Correct.
gonna leave my job for a limited amount of
Correct.
time.
Yeah.
College kids, we get a lot of college
College
students.
kids, okay.
So they're trying to get, you know, and the biggest thing is they're trying to get their foot in the door with the sheriff's office, and this
Okay.
is a way to do it. But yeah, it's not for lack of trying. We want 10 or 12 teams out there,
Understand.
trust me. You know, there's 18 lakes and 54 miles of river that we have to patrol, and we're doing that with 3 teams this year. So, you know, Coeur d'Alene is obviously has a boat on it all the time, the Spokane River. Hayden Lake is just as bad, sometimes if not worse. Spirit Lake has been getting a lot of attention
Do
recently
you
because
put anybody up on Spirit?
yeah, they've been up there every
Last
weekend.
couple
last
weekends,
couple
we've got a
weekends.
boat up there.
And so, you know, we're spread thin, just like you know, other people are, and but we are trying to staff it. You know, this year what we're doing is we're augmenting the weekends, the busy weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sundays with patrol and jail full-time guys that come over on overtime. But it's, you know, still that's still not enough.
How about publicizing that you have undercover cars, boats? That always scares me when I'm a speaker.
Well,
I'm serious, education.
now, let me jump in here if I may. Commissioner Duncan brought up earlier potentially partnering with Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls police departments. Nick, you raised this question yesterday with me. You have funding, if I'm not mistaken, or we have funding for 12 deputies, is that correct?
Yeah.
General.
And we're
Generally,
running
yeah.
6 right now. To Commissioner Duncan's point, if we partner with Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene, because after all, the river's straddling both communities, and we can get trained law enforcement to work the weekends, would that help? You're not gonna have
Yeah.
to go through the hiring process.
It would help, definitely, yeah, that would be something way above me, and probably the lieutenant to do.
I mean, we provide all the equipment. The equipment's
Yeah.
there, they just have to provide the box.
If they provided a certified peace officer to us that we could put through the Marine Academy at the beginning of summer and put them on the water, of course, that would definitely help, because it would provide us, if there was one officer from Coeur d'Alene City, one from Post Falls, that's a team, and they could be assigned to the Coeur d'Alene or the Spokane River exclusively, and then they could be augmented by us as well. We have a boat for them. We have plenty of vessels to be operated. There's at least 4 vessels every weekend that do not get operated.
How long to get them through the Marine training?
It's a 2-week academy.
2 weeks. Any other thoughts here? You know, what I'm hearing, at least from law enforcement, is you don't have the manpower to enforce. The question that I have is, even if you have the manpower, it's still hard to enforce. Nick, any thoughts?
Yeah, commissioners, as I've been marinating on this a long time, and the intensity of the Spokane River and the volume, as Commissioner Duncan mentioned, is just exacerbated problems that we had 10 years ago, even before wakeboard boats showed up. Our phones were ringing, the sheriff was responding. Those of us that have been doing this a while understand that this is a wave problem, regardless of the boat. Now we have a wave problem and a volume problem. Now we have a wave problem, a volume problem, and a new style of, what?
And speed problem.
So now, so we have, this is the perfect storm. And it just so happens that the Spokane River is unique. It's narrow, it's incredibly populated, and commissioners, I have a map in front of you if you have an opportunity to look at it.
Yeah.
For the audience's benefit, I'll tell you what, I'll circulate this, right, if you want to send it around. If I can draw your attention to the green portion of the map, you'll see that the city of Post Falls parallels the shoreline of most of the river on the north side. Coeur d'Alene has a section. I'll cut to the chase. These are their citizens as well. The county, in my opinion, Commissioner, should not be alone in this fight. This is a, not only is it a fight, let me retract it, in our desire to correct the problem. So to that end, the sheriff has to make that decision, the mayor, respective mayors. But it would be my hope that they would join the county in assisting the county. The county is, I'm assuming, may call for help here. And hopefully they'll answer that call, because as Lieutenant Higgins and Sergeant Blinkenfus have mentioned, we have empty boats, but we need cops to put in those boats. And regardless of what this good board might decide to do, and it's a difficult decision, and I can appreciate it, regardless of what you may implement, law enforcement needs to be there to enforce whatever this board may decide to do. In addition to that, I think that the community at large doesn't truly understand totally that this Board of County Commissioners is a policy on it, and that they would, by way of probably Jamila and the legal team, implement this soon-to-come maybe language. But once you implement it, commissioners, they have to enforce it.
How many entry points are there to launch a boat from the mouth of the Spokane River back just beyond the dam? Approximately.
Well, if you were, let's count 3rd Street, because that's the closest to the mouth. So if you were to launch at 3rd Street, Rainless,
Blackwell.
Third Street, Blackwell,
Greens
York,
Ferry,
Greens Ferry, and Camino.
Camino. So
4.
4 spots.
If you're coming from Washington, would those be the convenient entry points for the Washington
Probably
boaters?
Blackwell and Camino.
As
And
opposed to
yours.
coming downtown or going out
Yeah.
to Higgins or whatever.
Yes.
And then every house along there's got at least one boat or two.
Every house.
Yes. And Lieutenant Higgins brings up an excellent point. If you could now walk from the Peeps Restaurant to Templin's without getting your feet wet on dock sleds, and we haven't done a good job talking about that. Going back to Commissioner Duncan's point, there is an immense amount of growth that has happened. So what used to be acceptable because there was a little more room is no longer tolerable. And so to that end, I, as much as I've marinated, and I'll wrap it up here, Commissioners, I believe that without assistance from our partner agencies, and more intense amount of law enforcement during those peak hours and during weekends, I think that regardless of what the county commissioners may decide to do, you still have to have these good officers there to make sure that it's being adhered to.
Well, in the final analysis, if you can't enforce, you have to ban. That's the
sorry.
bottom line. I'm just saying, if you cannot enforce, you have to ban. If we can't enforce any action,
ban.
or
I'm sorry.
we have to ban. And I don't think we want to go there just yet, but Will, you and I, Sergeant Clickerfuss, you and I talked a couple days ago. There's one more ingredient. We talked about wave volume, speed. How about safety? We talked about potentially putting a stop to the tubing on the river. What do you think?
It's something we've discussed at length. We discussed it with the sheriff several weeks ago, and that's one of the things that we believe would be a way to help curb some of the issues on the river, prohibiting or somehow regulating the amount of towing operations, whether it be tubing, skiing, wake surfing, any of those things, because as you know, those of us that have been on the river have seen, especially on Friday, Saturday, Sunday evenings, it's very busy. And you've got, I've used this analogy several times, the Spokane River is I-90 with eastbound and westbound 2 lanes and a median. And in the case of the Spokane River, if it were I-90, you could do a U-turn anywhere you wanted at any given time to pick up your tuber and in front of all the other traffic, and then all the traffic then has to figure out how they're gonna get around you safely. And a lot of, you know, if they take the Boat Idaho class, they're taught that they have to, you know, come off plane, they have to slow down, they have to navigate. folks don't really know how to do that necessarily, and so they don't. And so it becomes a very dangerous time in the river when a child or even an adult is ejected from their tube or falls off their board, and now they're in this traffic lane of the Spokane River, and it becomes very dangerous. And so one of the things that we have proposed that would help alleviate some of this would be to either curb or ban certain towing operations.
Has anybody, to your knowledge, ever been severely injured or killed on the Spokane River during boating activities?
Sure.
It has happened.
Have they?
Not recently, thankfully,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it has.
Yeah, we'll hold your comments to the end, please.
I think if
There's
they
been no
haven't,
fatalities
if they haven't,
recently.
they will be. And,
Oh, yeah.
and now is a very heightened time, as Leslie said, the traffic, somebody pointed out the speed, and they're having a good time, but somebody's gonna be killed.
There's a precedence for it in County ordinance. Coeur d'Alene River is a no towing, it's a prohibited skiing area. It is narrower, it's about 250 to 400 feet wide at its widest points. But, so there already is a precedence in the county for similar legislation on another river.
Well, I hope I'm wrong.
Lieutenant Higgins, thoughts?
Yeah, I back to the fatality, the last fatality that I know of on the Spokane River was wave related. It wasn't a skier, it was a guy that was standing on a boat fishing in a cove, and somebody, it was a busy day, and a boat hit a wave and it broke the steering, and the steering turned and he took him out. That's the last fatality that I'm aware of on the Spokane River.
How long ago was that? About?
Oh, I'd say, how long have I been out of Marine? 6 years ago? 5 years ago, 6 years
Yeah.
ago?
It's not 20 years ago.
No.
Not
It
20.
wasn't
You're talking
yesterday.
about the two guys fishing.
Thank you.
Boat ran in right in the middle of the day.
Yeah, it was right off of Mill River.
Thank you
Right-
very
Right in
much.
front of mine, yeah.
Thank you.
That's not exactly,
Leslie, any other thoughts?
that's it.
Let me ask this question. I can approach, or we can approach our partners in the city of Post Falls and say, look, this problem is as much yours as it is ours, if not more. Because most of the waterfront is in fact in one or both of these jurisdictions. And so I can approach them and say, okay, guys, we need some help here. And see if we can't get seasoned deputies to jump on board, at least for the weekends or whatever other hours, our Marine, command staff think is important. But in addition to that, the idea of, and I think when we get into safety, I don't have a problem banning the towing, but limiting it right now to tubing. We can always escalate from there. The tubing bothers me because I see that as a severe safety issue, and usually tubing involves children. Not always, but frequently, more so than the actual wakeboarding, but that's just my opinion. I think no matter what we do with enforcement, I think the problem's going to continue. Because how else are you going to limit the boating? Now, I think to Leslie's point, if the enforcement action is enough to act as a deterrent, it might force more people onto the lake. But I don't know that there's an appetite on this board right now to get involved in an all-out ban. Or for that matter, turning the Spokane River into a complete no-wake zone. That's not what I'm hearing. And so, if we need to double the staff on the river, we have the funding. It's just a question of getting the bodies. And hiring them isn't going to work. You're absolutely right. That's the problem we have with patrol deputies in general, as you guys know, within our organization. So if we can get the staff, and we increase the staffing, what do you think?
If we can get more boats on the water, we can do more enforcement, I agree.
Yeah, it will have a calming effect, there is no doubt.
How many
I would-
boats are sitting idle currently?
There's usually 2 every weekend on the water between the Spokane River and the Portland Lake.
Which
They're
leaves how many idle?
Idle.
2, there's 2 that are not being utilized.
2 that are not being used.
Yeah, but I would still submit that you're still gonna have, we're gonna have the complaints of the wake sizes and the damage to the docks. We're gonna have all of that still.
Isn't
And
that
there's-
just a matter of physics, though? It's just strictly
I'm not
physics.
I'm
can
not a
tell you-
physics guy, so I couldn't tell you.
I'm not
but
either, but if you have a very narrow waterway,
No
and you
doubt.
throw a
Yes, sir.
small wake, if you're in the ocean and you have a tsunami and you're on a boat, it goes like this, bump, you don't feel it. But as it approaches shore, that's when the energy
it'll still give no relief to the citizens that complain or have the complaints that they believe that their property is being damaged, their docks are being damaged. It will give them generally no relief, because again, we have to tie that specific boat to that damage at that moment, and that's difficult at best. And so, I do agree that more importantly, more people on the water will have a calming effect and will make it more safe. I don't think it's going to address the concerns that the folks have had about the size of the wakes.
Thank you. Commissioners, I agree. And I think the issue here is what tools, rounding how we started this conversation, is what tools does KCSO need? What policy, what tweak to current ordinance or potentially new ordinance? And I appreciate Jamil Holmes attending today, who would probably be a large part of authoring some of that language should it come forward. So what tool do they need when there is a damaging wake or a wake that causes injury or damage? What tools can we give them from a language standpoint that if we can get additional officers there, they could enforce?
Well, that goes back to the question I asked earlier, and maybe this is a question for council. You're saying the judges set the fines?
If it's a misdemeanor, generally.
Right, those are established. So the Idaho code sets the baseline and then empowers the Board of County Commissioners to regulate the waterways use via its ordinances, which is why you've seen those resolutions come before you that then we have codified in the Sterling Codifier. So you really do have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you want to limit use. But
Can we raise the sum? Can we increase the sum on the fines? Somebody that buys a $150,000 boat's not gonna worry about a $100 fine. But if you hit him with $2,500, he might think twice.
well, we're still in infraction land. We're not.
Go ahead.
I haven't researched this specific issue. You still have the power to impose fines. Now, whether those are significant enough to deter behavior of someone who has money to burn, I don't think you have that much leeway. Ultimately, and Sergeant Clinkoff is exactly right. So if we're prosecuting this under Idaho's criminal statutes, it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. And there's no situation in which deputies can arrive on scene after the fact and provide evidence such that these
It's not like,
alleged
it's not
property
like
damage, right, it's not like speeding.
It's not like speeding.
So,
As far as penalties, how about a $5 fine? And attendance at a mandatory boating course on a Saturday costing $300 to attend. I think people would not want to be doing that.
Commissioner, if I may, in some of the research that I've done, I mean, this is not a Kootenai County problem, obviously. It's nationwide. Missouri, all across this nation, there's issues with wake.
Even other counties.
Even in the counties in Idaho, Valley County recently their board has been talking about this as well. And I guess one of the common themes that I'm seeing in some of the ordinances, this is out of Sawyer County, I believe in Michigan, some of the verbiage it talks about is wake enhancement watercraft or wake enhancement vessels, and they talk about plowing and things like that. And so distances are being extended nationwide, and in some of the counties in Idaho, they're looking at extending the distances from shore when doing these operations. From what I understand, you can have pontoon boats now that are making these large wakes too, so it's not just a wake boat. Some of these 35-foot cuddy cabins can put out just the size of a wake that some of these other vessels can. And so they're extending the distances and the size of the wake that can be created. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so they're saying if you're going to enhance your wake or do something plowing, if you're a cuddy or a wake boat, you have to be more than 500 feet or 700 feet or whatever the distance is. That's what the common theme is around the nation that's happening, to try and extend and get the wakes further out from the shorelines and docks. Again, it does come back down to, it is going to be a judgment call. And it is what it is. Law enforcement is judgment call. A lot of times it's judgment call. Very rarely is it black and white, and it is what it is, and we're okay with that for the most part. But at some point, there has to be some verbiage in there to not just pinpoint wake boats. They're the problem. Well, they're not necessarily the problem. There's one of the many vessels that can make these size of wakes. So I would submit that if any legislation is drafted, it would have to talk about enhanced wakes and or vessels doing something that is creating such a wake. We saw a vessel when I was with Commissioner Duncan. It was about a 35-foot cuddy flat in the water, 15 miles an hour, and it was putting a pretty good roller out. And it was really doing nothing in violation of state law or county ordinance. It was doing what it's designed to do, but it was still putting out the same wake that some of these wake vessels do as well. I spoke to some folks from one of the organizations, and they talked about 2-foot wakes and banning those and things. And I stated to them, well, you're gonna ban certain vessels from even being on the water in that point. The 35-foot cuddy cabin, for instance, will not be allowed on the Spokane River because it makes that wake.
And your sheriff's boat and
Our
the
sheriff's boats will make that
Parks
wake
and
as well.
Waterways boat
Yeah.
will also make that.
Our 2 jet boats for the Spokane River, when they're coming up and off a plane, it will put out a pretty good sized wake. So we would be in violation of county ordinance too. So the verbiage is going to be important. I kind of feel bad for the lawyers in this case. They have to come up with the verbiage to be able to make this all work and make this, make the judges, and make this enforceable.
Nick?
Again, it's not my wheelhouse, quite frankly. It's, in my opinion, commissioners, this is really a determination of the board with the best information provided by KCSO. This is what I do know generically speaking. The lack of presence is a significant issue. In 2007, again, Ryan, I think were you Rex Safety Super at that time? 2007, as I recall, Lieutenant Higgins can correct me at any time, we had a full-time, I don't want to say full-time, we had a boat there, a lot of presence. My phone rarely rang. As soon as that boat was gone, the phone calls began, before the inception of, well, the big increase in wakeboard boats. Kootenai County Parks and Waterways operates a 32-foot boat that weighs approximately 12,000 pounds. It can make a wake just as large, probably larger than the best wakeboard boat in our area. I've received 0 complaints, not one, from the property shoreline owner from our boat because it's operated in the conditions of the law. So, in the absence of law enforcement, it would force folks to take a good look at what they're doing. We're gonna have these issues. As to the wave, going back, I hate to keep circling back. If the wave is at issue and the KCSO needs a tool that is better than what we have, maybe that's something we need to take a look at. So regardless of how much enforcement we have present, when they are there, they can act on that. Because that's what I'm hearing, is that it's a challenge. I can't answer that. Better the experts like Jamila, through her research and advisement, and KCSO can give you the best advice on that.
Well, commissioners, I mean, you have language here
Yeah,
now
we do.
that is enforceable and that works. It's just a matter of not having eyes on the entire length of the river at any time. When you mentioned being out on a personal watercraft, there very well may have been law enforcement presence at the other end of the river than you were, and you just didn't see it. But you just don't have enough bodies.
Nick, did you want to say something?
Just one more thing. I know we're here talking about the Spokane River today, and it's tough to get the board together and talk about one issue, so while we're here, it's advisable that the board start considering other bodies of water and how we're going to address those. If we are fortunate enough that this conceptual idea of bringing other agencies in to assist and it's a team effort and we can make some headway, fantastic. I'm excited to see that. I know lots of people are. But we have Spirit Lake, we have Hayden Lake, we have Lake Coeur d'Alene, we have a flood of growth in our communities. So it's advisable that we look at this long term. So I say, let's get something in place, let's address the issue best we can. But there does need to be some discussion about what we're going to do with future bodies of water. I believe that Spirit Lake will be warming up as well. With phone calls and problems, and particularly smaller lakes. Fernand,
Chain lakes.
Exactly. exactly, the chain lakes that are a little out of town. So we're hearing about the Spokane River a lot, but this problem is countywide, it's statewide, and it's nationwide. And so that we should start contemplating how we're gonna apply resources in a mindful, well-planned process to address this problem moving forward.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Thank you. As far as Spirit Lake is concerned, there appears to be some consensus, at least on the part of the Waterways Advisory Board, as to what needs to happen there. So I think that one, we might have a quick resolution to that one, even if it's not today. I think the most pressing at this time is the Spokane River. The lake has its issues too, but you have a 200-foot no-wake zone. That's a little bit of a different story, but I generally agree with you, Nick. I'm hearing 4 concerns here: wave, volume, speed, and safety. And to try to attack each one of these individually is going to be quite a challenge. And the only way that we can basically attack them in mass is with increased enforcement. And right now, we're running at half the staff. I think we need to double the staff. And again, that's going to come back to us, at least for a quick resolution, to pursue both Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene to see if we can get the necessary manpower that we need for increased enforcement. I don't know that it's necessarily going to solve the problem. I don't know if it's going to stop the erosion. But I think what happens is if we don't increase the enforcement to address these 4 areas of concern, and if that enforcement does not produce a deterrent, I can foresee the day where it's going to go no wake, because I don't know that we're going to have another choice. Now, I hope this works. I hope the enforcement produces some result that everybody can live with. I can also see higher registration fees for out-of-town boaters that are coming into the area. We're the ones paying the property taxes, and they're getting a, shall we say, less expensive ride and contributing to the problems as well. But on the other hand, they have a right to the waterway as much as anyone else. But initially, I see increased enforcement. I think that's the first step, because that's been lacking in the sense that we haven't had the manpower. And I want to make one final comment, and I'll turn it over for comment. The issue with hiring is an issue that we have as a law enforcement agency countywide, and we're addressing that problem.
And I would say probably even nationwide.
No, thank you, okay? Getting qualified people to get through the various tests for law enforcement is a major challenge. It's a sad testament to our society, but it is a fact. We're addressing it by way of increased wages, which hopefully we'll be addressing in this next budget cycle, and raising the bar, and hopefully getting a higher qualified applicant. But that's sort of beside the point here. So what I'm going to do at this point, we only have 9 minutes left. I'm going to turn it over for public comment. Please make your comments brief. Your name and address, please. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Linda Alexander. I'm Director of Camp White at the Greens Ferry area, at the widest part of the river, at the turn in the river, and that particular location has become, as you all know in law enforcement, a hotbed of speed and lack of safety, which has been contributed to by the fact that we had all of those of us who live and work along the river have had to pull all the buoys that indicated that there was a hazard, especially the turn at that river. And I've been talking to all of you guys about this. I have a lot of docks, and I have a small swim area between the 2 docks, and I have church camp going on right now, and my children are being threatened by the lack of awareness of the turn in the river and a hazard being right there. So I am going to put flags out on my docks in order to hopefully get some kind of attention to the hazard right there, but to not be able to, for you guys to pull all the buoys and then not let us put anything back for a year is unacceptable. And it's unsafe.
Other comments? Yes, sir.
I'm Jim Stafford, 4699 West Mill River Court, and I represent the River Friends 2019. And I think we agree that enforcement, okay, more people, more enforcement on the river will help. Someone once said that it's the economy, stupid. Well, it's the wake, stupid. And if you're not going to solve the wake problem, okay, and how you enforce it, you're not going to be able to do anything for the homeowners, and the safety. And singling out the guy that's in the tube, okay, it is to me, that you know there's a problem, right? But you're only gonna penalize one group, okay? It's a multiple number of boats that cause large wakes, and we need to get it under control. I've had conversations with these two gentlemen, and privately, and I don't know if I'm talking about school, that our proposal, okay, that we made about the size of the wake, okay, and the type of boats that are on the river is enforceable. They've said that they can teach their people approximately what a 2-foot wave is, okay? And if you take the fact that you take the boats that are generating the wakes by some mechanical means and let them go to the lake and put this 500-foot barrier on the lake, it solves 90% of the issues, okay? So for a very small number of people that are causing the issue, you can solve it. By just putting law enforcement and not taking care of the wake, stupid, okay, nothing's gonna happen.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked.
Name and address,
My
please.
name is Robert R. Steiger. My address is 11831 West Riverview Drive, Post Falls, Idaho. I'd like to call your attention to the County Code Title 6, Public Properties and Waterways, Chapter 2, County Parks and Waterways, Section 6-2-4, Vessel Operations, Paragraph C3. I'm going to quote it. During the day or night, no motor-driven watercraft shall be operated at a speed or in a manner that creates an excessive, dangerous, or damaging wake, period. I think due diligence of your office requires that you enforce this thing. And I'm calling on you today to get that enforced. That addresses wakes, right?
Mhm.
That's a big part of the problem. And your comment about being safe for the kids that are on tubes, I understand also. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to second exactly what he said. It's not the wakeboarders, it can be a bathtub, good Lord, the statute's there. You've said over and over, more enforcement. Can I equate that word with writing citations? Or riding around in a boat looking at what's happening? These gentlemen, I have heard, they don't feel like this is enforceable. Well, how do you know it's not enforceable if you're not writing a ticket? The wakeboarders, to some degree, are getting a bad rap. There's your code. You've got the law. Come on. It's there. It's black and white.
Thank you, sir.
My name's Pat
Yeah,
Green.
okay, and then you can go next. Go right ahead.
My name's Pat Green. I'm from Sandpoint, Idaho, but I work for Tobler Marina. I've been fortunate to work on over probably 50 lakes in the United States. I've worked for 4 different marinas. Moved to Coeur d'Alene area about 3 years ago and have seen some of the growth that's happened around here. There's no doubt in my mind that the growth is probably the biggest push behind this issue. The Spokane River can be extremely dangerous. We frequently advise our customers to stay off the river. One of the biggest things, just from the past 2 meetings that I've noticed, there isn't a lot of education in regards to home ownership on the river. There are different types of docks and different type of boat storage, lifts and things like that that can help with a high traffic area. And I saw that firsthand on numerous different lakes that I've operated on. I think that should be part of this, educating homeowners how to take care of their property, like Mrs. Duncan said, protecting her house from forest fires and things like that. The erosion on Hayden and the Spokane River is blatantly obvious, and that's, in my opinion, due to volume. I think, just with talking to different guys who've been on the river, I talked to a guy the other night who'd been on the river for 40 years, right next to Greens Ferry. He mentioned a thing they did about 20 years ago that talked about just homeowners on the river being able to use water sports activities from like an hour after sunrise and an hour before sunset. That alleviated any water sports activities during the day and kind of kept the people from Spokane or Washington or other areas, from recreating right in front of their house. So I think that you guys are going to do a great job in this decision, but I also want to remind you that it does affect the rest of the waterways in Bonner County and in Kootenai County.
I'm gonna have to cut you off, just to let this gentleman behind you go. Go right ahead, sir.
My name is, my name is Ray Bradley. I'm at 351 South Hidden Island Lane, Coeur d'Alene. It's on the river. I've been on the river since 1988. I've been on the Waterways Board since 1992. I would like to take a section, Commissioner, with your thoughts about the tubers. I think that anybody who's being towed in the Spokane River is a danger, because it isn't just that when you have a tuber in the water that you go back. Any of these boats that are pulling anything, they all go back. They've all got people in the water. They've all got boats coming in from all directions. 10 years ago, I was on a subcommittee from the Waterways Board, and we decided that we needed to do something about safety in the Spokane River. And we came up with a proposal to limit towing on the weekends and on holidays. I believe you could solve a lot of these problems if you, on the Spokane River at least, if you eliminated the towing of all things on the Spokane River. I think it's now not just the weekends. I think it's grown to the point where that would solve a lot of the problems, because if you can't tow, you can't get a surfer up, which means you're going to have to take all of that activity off the river and put it up there on the lake. It's going to keep all those people in the water safer. It's going to eliminate, I would think, 90% of the large wakes, and I think that would be a good solution.
Thank you. I'm gonna let one more, and that's it, because it's 12 o'clock. Go right ahead, please.
Susan Steiger, 11831 West Riverview in Post Falls. You've heard from me before. There's been lots of good comments today. Just a couple of clarifications. Towing, looking at that would be a great way of addressing it, as long as it does two things. It includes those who are surfing behind boats but not connected. If I were one of those people, I'd say, you're not towing me, I'm not connected to you. So you need to be really careful about the words and how you put them. And you're right, whether it's a wake boat or surf boat, etc., they all do the extreme turn around and go back to catch people. So considering the breadth of what you're doing, I would strongly encourage you, as Sergeant Klinkofish has mentioned, look to what other jurisdictions are already doing. There are some really good examples out there. You can build on the rule that you already have in place. The county rule, excessive dangerous wakes, I think it would help a lot if you would guide your KCSO and others to say, what do we mean by that? You don't have to get down to, is it a 24-inch wake or is it a 26-inch wake? But you've heard from me before, there's a huge difference between a 1-foot wake, which most boats operating well do, and a 3-foot wake. And any of us can tell the difference between a 1-foot wake and a 3-foot wake. So guidance to the staff to clarify that would help a lot.
Okay, thank you very much. So the time is now. Nick, you want to make a concluding comment?
Just for the benefit of the public, the Idaho Department of Lands has jurisdiction over buoys and markers in the river. Kootenai County did not request any buoys removed from the Spokane River. It is not county ordinance, that is state law, and it is mandated by the Idaho Department of Lands. Kootenai County is not a player in that endeavor.
Okay. On that note, 12:03 p.m., this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.